Hi guys, so in today's Telehealth Lunch and Learn, we're going to talk about all the basics with telehealth, go over some basic troubleshooting issues that you might see, talk about some home equipment to be using, and then we'll just troubleshoot some basic issues towards the end. So I'm going to take you over to Raintree so that you can see how to get started with this session. Okay. So you can see I have some telehealth patients on my schedule. So if I want to get started with this 12 o'clock patient, I'm going to right click and hit RT Connect right here. So it's giving you some options for how you want to communicate with this patient. So you want to communicate with them via a video call. So I'm going to click on this option right here. And then it'll allow you to choose whether you want to send the invite to their cell phone via a text or to their email address. I usually like to hit both just so that the patient has the option to choose whether they want to use their phone or their computer. So from there, what you can do is hit modify invitation message. And this is not something that you have to do, but I just want to show you guys so you know what the patient sees. So if you click on that, then you can see the message that gets sent out to them before each session. Notice here that it says to use Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, or Safari. This is not compatible with Internet Explorer. And that's one of the issues that I ran into a couple of times when I first started doing this. So just make sure that the patient is aware of that if they are having trouble joining the session at all. And if you wanted to write anything else to them in this message, you can always include that as well. You're able to modify this message. Once that's good to go, once you have, the cell phone and the email address selected there, you're going to want to hit start session and send invite. When you click on that, it's going to take a second, and then it's going to open up in a new browser right here. So normally you would see your video pop up and you would see yourself on the screen. I'm just using my camera right now for the Zoom session, so it's not showing up. But when you're ready for that patient, you're just going to hit start session right here. If the patient is already logged in, you'll just see them right there. And if not, you'll just have to wait for them to log in. Typically, I give patients about a 5-minute grace period with the telehealth sessions. They shouldn't need too much longer than that to get logged on. So once it hits that 5-minute mark after their session, if they're still not logged in, then I usually give them a call just to make sure that they're not having any trouble logging in or anything like that. So that's how you start the session. And then I will show you in here, back in Raintree, what to do from there. So even though you start the session via telehealth, you do still need to check that appointment in. So you're going to right click and then hit check in right here. Okay, and those were just some extra messages that came up because this is a fake patient. This is not a real patient here. So once the patient is checked in, you can double click on that to open up the note just like usual. And let me just go into the chart to open this up. Okay. And I just want to show you guys a couple of things that I typically do. So in activities, if you scroll down to the comments section, in here, I usually write what the home equipment is. So, say they have some 2-pound dumbbells, a green TheraBand, a foam roller, whatever it is. So that way, if someone else takes over this patient, they're able to see right there what it is they have to work with. It's a good reminder for you in the future sessions as well. So that makes life a little bit easier. But other than that, you really don't have to change your documentation at all. There's no extra modifiers that you have to add in manually. Raintree takes care of all of this for you. And we're going to go over that again at the end. So you're just going to want to document as normal. So you're going to put in your subjective as usual, make sure the activities are all correct. As a reminder, you cannot bill for modalities or manual treatment, obviously, because we can't provide that over the computer. And then once your activities are correct, you're going to want to document your assessment, transfer the charges just like usual, and then you can sign the note. So it's pretty straightforward in that sense. Moving on from there, let's talk about a couple of other things. So who can provide telehealth services? It's a PT, PTA, OT or CODAs can all provide telehealth services. There's just no aides that are allowed to provide telehealth services at this point in time. Let's review some of the changes from Clinicient to Raintree in terms of telehealth, because I know a lot of you started doing telehealth on Clinicient, but there are a couple of changes to go over. One of the big ones is that we no longer are using DocuSign for consent paperwork or registration paperwork. When you send out the link to the appointment for Raintree, it automatically makes the patient sign consent before they're allowed to join the appointment. So you don't have to send out anything extra ahead of time. And then as another feature with Raintree, we can always send out the registration paperwork electronically. So this is not something that we need to use an outside system for anymore. Everything is integrated through Raintree. The next one is that we no longer need to add any modifiers manually. The system will automatically do this for you, so you don't need to worry about that anymore. There are also no more extra documentation or templates or anything like that needed. Everything is integrated into the system again. One other good thing is that the patient is automatically prompted to pay their copay prior to entering the session. So we're not going to have to go chase them down after the session if they have a balance that's accrued or anything like that. They will be forced to pay that copay before they even enter the session. And one other really great thing is that we're now able to screen share. So it makes it a lot easier to do the MIPS questionnaires, because you can go right from Raintree, share your screen, and then just do the questionnaire with them instead of having to enter it in manually or anything like that. It makes it a lot easier. All right, so let's just talk about some pros and cons in general in terms of telehealth. So some of the benefits are that it's complete one-on-one care. Your patient gets your undivided attention for 45 minutes. So it can be really helpful for those patients that just need a little bit of extra explanation or anything like that. And it does tend to be very education focused. These are not patients that we can put our hands on or anything like that. So it really is providing a lot of education, which ultimately serves to make them more independent in their care anyway. So I think this is really actually a benefit that it is so education focused. Another thing that we quickly touched on is that it's very easy to complete these MIPS questionnaires, as your screen is shared with them. They can just follow along the questionnaire with the questionnaire, and they can tell you what option they would like to select. Next, the ability to provide services that we're unable to provide in the clinic. This one's really a great one for a couple different situations. So one big one that we've run into is for a lower level patient, if they need any caregiver training or anything like that, it allows us to do that inside of their own home. So a patient that I had a couple weeks ago, she was saying that she's concerned because she's having a hard time transferring off the floor. She has spastic hemiparesis. So one of the things that we were able to actually practice is where she can safely get up off of the ground in her home environment if she falls either in the living room or in the bathroom or anything like that. So it is very functional, this training. And we can do this for caregivers as well. If they need any body mechanic training or just help with how to safely transfer a patient or assist them in the bathroom or whatever it is, we're able to provide that training in their own home, which is really a great thing. And then the other thing that we can do too is some ergonomic evaluations. So a lot of people are working from home these days, and we're getting a lot of postural dysfunction, back pain, all of that sort of stuff. So we're actually able to look at, their work setup in the home, and it doesn't have to be in the home either. It can actually be at work if, that's something that they were interested in. And one other thing that I want to note as well, even if a patient is being treated in the clinic, this doesn't mean that we can't save one session to do this ergonomic evaluation or save one session towards the end to go over their home exercise program when they're actually at home, make sure that they're doing everything okay, make sure that their setup looks good. So it doesn't have to be solely for just the telehealth patients. It can be an in-clinic patient that we just save one visit to do a telehealth visit as well. That's a great way to use it. And then finally, the last benefit is that it removes a transportation barrier, which can be a really big problem in the lower socioeconomic status areas of the county or of the state. And, also if just anyone is having car trouble, some of my vestibular patients, if they're feeling, dizzy and nauseous, it, removes that added barrier of having to drive to the clinic. So those are the good things about telehealth. So let's talk about some of the challenges. You know, one of the most obvious ones and one of the most common ones that we see is the internet issues. Most often, I would say what I see is that I can see the patient on the video, but the audio, for whatever reason, is not syncing up. So in order to bill for a telehealth session, we need synchronous audio and visual. So it is perfectly okay to have the patient on the computer screen and then call them over the phone and put it on speakerphone. So that way we have that synchronous component. Just one's over the phone and one's over the computer, but that works. You can do that. I do that quite a bit. Another challenge is low technological literacy in some patients. So you may need to take a little bit of extra time to, you know, explain to the patient how to turn their camera on and that sort of stuff. Just make sure you're giving yourself enough time ahead of the appointment so that it doesn't eat up too much of your appointment time doing that sort of stuff. One of the other things is a lack of equipment. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail coming up, and some ways to get around that. And then also an unsafe patient population. So if someone's at a fall risk or something like that, telehealth can be a little bit challenging, but we're also going to review some ways to get around that as well. All right, so going back to the equipment. So one thing that you can do is use just some common household items. So with that, I have some weights here listed for you and some items that you can use around the house. So 1 pound is about a can of vegetables, soup, something in a can. A bag of coffee usually comes in a 1 pound bag. You just have to make sure it's full, that they're not, you know, it's a half full bag. And then a plastic water bottle that's filled up is going to be about 1 pound. The metal ones that are filled up are a little bit more than that. So if you want more weight, that's good. So 2 pounds, you can just take 2 of those cans and put them in a bag. You can use a carton of milk. 5 pounds is usually a bag of sugar, flour, rice, something like that. Just make sure it's not open so it's not spilling all over their house, obviously. 8 pounds, you can use a gallon of water, a gallon of milk. Cast iron skillet is actually around 8 pounds. And then laundry detergent is actually around 9 pounds. One other thing that you can use for lifting mechanics is loading things into a laundry basket. That's a nice way to kind of recreate the crate that we use in the clinic. One other thing to note too, if you're using a water bottle or especially like a bag filled with cans or something like that, it's going to be a lot less stable than just using a dumbbell. So there's a little bit more of a stabilization component to that as well, makes it a little bit more challenging. For the higher level patient, we've actually had some, you know, we've had fun treating some of these higher level patients over telehealth. So some things, you know, just ideas in general for these higher level patients. In order to increase the weight, you can fill up a backpack with books or rocks or just something weighted for some weighted squats, make the weight a little bit heavier there. I've done some running intervals and agility training in like an outdoor setting. So if they have like a back patio or even the backyard or something like that, this is a great place to do some running intervals, shuffling, some jump squats, all of that sort of stuff. It's a really great opportunity for that. You can use a t-shirt or paper plates for sliders, or even, you know, just socks without any grips on the bottom or anything like that. You can use that for mountain climbers and some dynamic planks and that sort of stuff. Along those same lines, dynamic planks, maybe some plank up downs, just challenging that stability as well. And then, like we talked about a little bit earlier, doing some of those plyometric exercises, really easy to recreate at home. Don't really need much specialized equipment for that. All right, let's talk about some of the more challenging patient situations. So again, with the equipment, you can use the body weight exercises, household items like we reviewed. Offer to pick up bands from the clinic as well. If we know that the patient's coming in, we can have, you know, a green and a blue and a black or whatever progression you think that they'll need, but set them up with the progressions that they'll need to get through to discharge. That is always an option for patients. Also with putty, if they need any putty or anything like that, they can always come into the clinic, pick it up, and we can bill for it at the next visit. And also, you know, we can just offer advice on where to purchase these things too. With the screen sharing option, you can always share your screen and pull up Amazon or whatever website and show them, okay, you know, these bands will be helpful, this weight would be good for you. Patients usually really appreciate that. So hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better about the lack of equipment at home and some ways to get around that. And one other challenging situation that I want to talk about is the unsafe patient. So if you have anyone that's at a fall risk, it is a little bit challenging to do these telehealth sessions just because you can't keep your hands on them, can't use a gait belt, you know, anything like that. So what I usually do is see if there is someone else that's available that can be present for the session, you know, that can just be on standby if the patient's doing balance training or anything like that. I've had some husbands come into sessions, I've had granddaughters, so usually there's someone as long as you just ask. Obviously always have the patient next to a wall or a counter if you're doing something that may challenge their balance and compromise their safety. And then one other thing to think about too is just, you know, if this is a patient that you're concerned about something like that, have permission to call 911 in case of an emergency and make sure that you know where they are. If they are at home, that way you can tell the 911 dispatcher, you know, this patient fell, I think they need assistance, they're at this address. So just something to keep in mind. You know, we hope that never happens, but just in case, we want to be prepared. So that's all I have for you today, guys. If you have any questions at all with telehealth, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. That's my email right on the screen right there. So any questions at all, please reach out.